I've asked my community to send in their scariest ghost stories they've ever experienced. And these are 3 of the best ones I've ever heard. They are true ghost stories from real people. Let's jump into it. Our first story comes from Reddit user Elemental Air, who says that their friend had a scary experience when trying to fix his new TV. And if you do, then be sure to check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes as I do here. This happened to a close friend of mine several years ago when he was in college. My first apartment was a large 1-bedroom garden apartment in a duplex. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out my podcast. Also, be sure to join my community so you can share your spooky stories. I'll see you next time. It was relatively inexpensive because the owner was willing to offer a deal to anyone who would move in immediately because he believed the place was haunted. Apparently, the previous tenant had moved out in the middle of the night in the middle of winter and refused to return any of the landlord's calls. According to the landlord, all the neighbors said they never saw her and she never signed for any of her packages. So, he offered the apartment at a discount until someone took him up on it. That someone was me. Within a week, I had unpacked and settled in. The following weekend I went out with some friends and we had a great time. I came home late and was exhausted. I tossed my keys on the entryway table, went to the bathroom to change my clothes and headed straight to bed. I fell asleep pretty quickly, but I was awoken in the middle of the night to what sounded like screams in the next apartment. I ignored it because I assumed that whoever my neighbor was had some sort of mental issues and went back to sleep. Well, I was awoken again, this time to what sounded like blood-curdling screams directly in my apartment. I sat up in bed in the pitch-black room and listened intently. I heard what sounded like heavy footsteps pacing back and forth directly outside my bedroom door. There was also some kind of muffled sobbing and dragging metal moans. Suffice it to say that I did not fall back asleep that night. First light came too quickly for me. I immediately got out of bed and ran to the closet to see what was in there. I had never opened this closet before because it had a weird doorknob that was shaped like an eye and it scared me. Anyway, I finally worked up the courage to open it, and what I saw inside was terrifying. Inside the closet was a full-length mirror. But in that mirror, reflected in the depths of the closet, I saw a woman sitting on the floor sobbing uncontrollably. She was wearing a long white nightgown, and her hair was covering her face. She was hunched over as if she were holding something in her hands. I quickly shut the door and ran to the bathroom. I was shaking and sweating, and my heart was racing. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at myself in the mirror trying to calm down. I reminded myself that I was a grown man, and there was no such thing as ghosts. Still, I was too afraid to go back into the bedroom. So I spent the entire day in the bathroom reading a book. At some point during the day, I went back into the bedroom to grab my phone and I noticed that the closet door was open. I shut it, but I didn't see or hear anything else for the rest of the month that I lived there. He and his roommates decided to go trick-or-treating around the campus since they were all kind of lame and didn't want to spend money going out to a club or anything. On the way to the first house they planned to visit, my friend and his buddy noticed a house that they hadn't seen before. The architecture was strange, almost like something straight out of a fairy tale. My friend figured it was some fraternity or sorority house, but he couldn't remember seeing it before. They walked up to the door and rang the doorbell. An old woman answered the door dressed as a witch. She was cackling and seemed delighted by their costumes. Before they could say trick or treat, she beckoned for them to come inside. They should have known right then that they were in trouble. The inside of the house was filled with cobwebs and dust. It looked like no one had lived there for decades. The old woman led them into a dimly lit living room and gestured for them to sit on the couch. She disappeared into another room and returned with 2 glasses of water and a plate of cookies. Then she disappeared again. And after what seemed like forever, she came back with a bowl full of candy. As my friend was reaching for the candy, a porcelain doll rolled across the floor and stopped at his feet. It had a blank face, and its eyes seemed to glow in the dark. The old woman cackled again and told them to eat as much candy as they wanted. My friend ate a few pieces, but they were stale and tasted awful. He noticed that the other kid had stopped eating and was staring at the wall. Then the kid started screaming and panicked. He jumped off the couch and ran for the door. The old woman blocked his path and screamed at him to stop running. The kid ran past her and burst through the front door. My friend quickly followed him outside and saw that the house was gone. It had vanished without a trace. They were now standing in front of a row of normal houses. None of them looked familiar. My friend searched for his friend, but he was nowhere to be found. He wandered around the neighborhood until he recognized the street he was on. He walked back to his apartment, shaken but relieved that the nightmare was over. The next day he told his roommates what had happened, but they didn't believe him. They thought he'd made the whole thing up. Later that day, his friend came home looking shaken and upset. He told my friend that he'd gone to the police to report his disappearance, but they wouldn't take him seriously. They thought he'd run away from home or something. My friend tried to explain that he'd never run away from home and that he'd been kidnapped by a witch, but the cops just laughed at him. They told him to go home and relax and that everything would be fine. That night, my friend couldn't sleep. He kept having nightmares about the old woman and the porcelain doll. He got up and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when he saw it, the porcelain doll sitting on the counter staring at him. It had a blank face, and its eyes seemed to glow in the dark. My friend screamed and backed away, knocking the doll off the counter. It shattered on the floor, but the pieces seemed to writhe and twist. The doll's head rolled closer to my friend and whispered, "You can't escape me." Then everything went black. My friend woke up the next morning with no memory of what had happened the night before. He went to the kitchen and saw that the floor was covered in shards of glass. The doll was gone. You can listen and subscribe on various platforms. Here's what they said. My friend was a repair guy for big screen TVs, stereos, computers, etc. He would pick up the broken items and take them back to his shop to work on them. One day he was called out to a house to pick up a large flat screen TV that didn't work. The customer said she had dropped it off at her late father-in-law's house. She wasn't sure if it had been on or off when it broke, but she was sure he hadn't touched it. When he picked it up, he noticed it was covered with religious iconography, and that seemed odd to him since he was an atheist. He looked at the stickers on the back, and they were all religious in nature. It was at that moment he realized this was a house call he really didn't want. His gut was telling him to just put it in his van and get out of there, but being young and not listening to his gut, he carried the TV into the house and set it down on the workbench. Then he turned on the overhead light. Suddenly, the TV flickered to life and the screen displayed a distorted image of the man who had owned the house. The man was old and emaciated, wearing a tattered nightgown and clutching a cross. The image faded after about 30 seconds. Then everything went silent. The radio, the refrigerator, even the clock on the wall. All of them shut off completely. He tried to leave, but the front door, which had been unlocked, was now locked. He started screaming for help, pounding on the door, but no one could hear him. After what felt like hours, he heard the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. He ran to the window and saw the customer standing at the top of the stairs staring at him. Her face was pale and she looked terrified. But she wasn't alone. Behind her stood the old man from the television. His eyes were vacant and soulless. He continued staring at my friend until he smashed the window with a wooden mallet and escaped. Once outside, he ran to his van and drove away as fast as he could. The TV is still sitting in the shop, and no one dares touch it. I'm not sure if it works or not. I think he may have taken it to a junkyard and left it there. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, then make sure to hit that subscribe button because I'd love to have you here. Our next story comes from Reddit user Crimson Giant, who shares this story about a Halloween night of terror. And our last story comes from reader Shock and Awe, who recalls the haunting experience of finding a ghost in their closet. Well, that's all I have for you today.